everybody. My name is Taylor Pederson. I am the Senior Business Development Manager at Neoscape, as well as the President to the Board of the Builders of Color Coalition. I'd like to welcome all of the City Biz audience to today's podcast, and I'd like to thank my colleague and dear friend, Colleen Fonseca, for joining me for this interview today. Hi, Colleen.
Hi, Taylor. It's great to be with you today and with the whole City Biz community.
Colleen, thank you again for joining us. I would like to start with you kicking off a little bit about your role at BCC, as well as a little bit about the background of what we do.
Great. Thanks so much, Taylor. Hi, everyone. I'm Colleen Fonseca, the proud Executive Director for the Builders of Color Coalition, and have now been with the organization for the last 2 years. It's crazy to think it's already been 2 years, Taylor. In this role, I'm really responsible for leading the programming, initiatives, and execution of really strategic goals that our board has set forth through our 4-year strategic plan. A good portion of that is also fundraising to support the organization, as well as onboarding and supporting consultants as well as staff members that we have. On a day-to-day basis, our work at the Builders of Color Coalition, in particular, my role looks very different on any given day. But I would say the bulk of my day is spent really thinking through and putting together programming, content, relationships, and partnerships to best support our real estate developers of color, as well as real estate investors and professionals, and really supporting them and providing access for them to grow their businesses and scale their expertise in the industry.
Within your last couple of years at BCC, can you highlight some of the successes that you've seen the organization achieve?
Yeah, so as an organization, we initially started in 2017, and the organization has grown tremendously. What really was a sort of dinner that was hosted at our founder, Dave Madden's living room as a dinner to sort of have developers and investors of color come together has now blossomed into this network of over 700 real estate professionals of color. And our organization is really a convener of this network of 700 professionals, as well as municipalities and administrations and leaders across the greater Boston commercial market, in addition to private development firms and trade associations that work in the commercial real estate market here in Boston. So some of the things that I've been especially proud of to see in my short time with the Builders of Color Coalition is we've been able to launch, initiate, and complete 2 fellowship programs that we designed in response to the need for developers of color to have access to information, relationships, and capital to really scale their operations and their businesses. So we were really working with cohorts of 10 to 15 development companies owned by people of color and walking them through the process of here's how you've done sort of a 3-family unit. Here's how you take those same skills and sort of scale your projects from 3 units at a time to 30, 50, 100, and in some instances, some of our folks are now doing joint ventures and working on projects that are 500 units and up. So that's one of my proudest successes, honestly, and something I'm very proud of at the Builders of Color Coalition. As a convener, we've been able to wrap in and bring in so many real estate experts and many of the organizations that have been working with us for years to really put together content and expertise and sort of lift the curtain of what it takes to really be successful in this industry. And it's just been immensely powerful to see all the great success that those developers have had in such a short time frame, whether it's securing funding for new projects, working on projects in other markets for the first time, and they're going really well. We've seen folks that are hiring, they're growing their businesses and their development teams, and they're hiring folks from our network. So it's been really amazing just to see our developers really growing and creating a community amongst themselves from our programs, and the work that we've been doing with trade associations. So we've partnered with most of the local trade associations in the real estate market here in Greater Boston. So like the Greater Boston Real Estate Board and its 5 subdivisions, NAIOP Massachusetts, Urban Land Institute, Crew Boston, Coronet, and we've really been able to increase the diversity 11% in 2 years of all of their prospective boards. So when I first came to the Builders of Color Coalition, all these organizations had signed on to and committed to diversifying their boards of their trade associations. And we've seen such incredible progress in the last 2 years. I'm very proud to say that we've worked in collaboration with those associations to bring those numbers up.
I want to hit on just two things or expand on the two things that you had just mentioned. First was you said that there are 700 plus commercial real estate professionals of colors who subscribe to the Builders of Color Coalition and engage within our network. I think that's really important for us to point out as an organization. Originally, when the conversations first started happening within the industry, as you know, Colleen, people were really looking for how they could engage with professionals of color in the real estate space. So to see that we have in the last 5 years have been able to expand on that and really build a network of people is really important to really highlight. The second thing is the ability to take those folks and really kind of engage them in that commercial real estate space. So the growth of 11% for our partners and organizations seeing diversity within their networks as well is huge. And I think that's really what's going to be changing the landscape of development within Boston. So I'm also glad that you pointed those things out as some of the successes that we've had here at BCC.
Absolutely. And I will say, especially on our network of 700 real estate professionals, this was work that our board, not paid, sort of on a volunteer basis through their networks, had come together, like folks like you, Taylor, and really putting together what is now this really powerful, first of its kind, one of a kind directory that exists. And it's really supportive and helpful, especially in conversations that we're having as an organization when private development companies and sort of partners come to us and say, we're hiring for a role, but we don't think that there are any project managers of color. We've really tried, but we just haven't been able to find them. And we can sort of say very quickly, well, we have 700 real estate professionals and about 160 of them are project managers. So we know that there are folks there. Let's maybe talk through some ways that you can engage and some tactics for you to maximize outreach and inclusion in your firm.
Yeah, which has been wonderful, and to see the returns on people being able to advance their careers through that job board is fabulous as well. I'd like to ask you just another question. What is some things that you see that are going to be exciting and happening with the organization in the next years to come?
Yeah, so one thing that we are immensely excited about here at the Builders of Color Coalition is we've recently initiated a research and advocacy initiative where we are pulling together best practices from across the industry on how to really advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. In particular, over the next year, we're going to be focusing on access to capital for real estate projects. So in the last 2 or so months, we've been pulling together and reaching out to different lending institutions in the greater Boston commercial market and have 14 lending institutions that have signed on to disclose what are their financial products, as well as a commitment to engage with developers and investors in our network. Really from here and what the next few months of our work is going to look like is we're assembling right now a task force of 8 to 12 real estate finance professionals that are going to help us and guide us in pulling together a best practices toolkit and do kind of a landscape analysis of what are the challenges, the gaps, and opportunities that exist as it relates to capital and investment for people of color, in particular for the commercial real estate industry. So we are very excited to sort of dive into this work, and especially to have such amazing partners that have already agreed to participate with us on this initiative. And we've already seen a good amount of activity from our partners that they're lending to folks in our network, they're building those relationships, they're building that social capital, and as well as increasing capital sources for our developers and investors in our network. So we're very excited to be rolling out a more sort of open and more transparent toolkit so that as opposed to us having one-by-one conversations with 17 financial institutions or 20 institutions that reach out to us, we can sort of say, hey, we've done an industry analysis. We've been guided by these 12 real estate experts that are focused on finance. And here are like the 5 or 10 best practices that we've been able to find. And here are some ways of how other banks or lenders or investors have done it and enhanced diversity, equity, and inclusion. Maybe this is a great place to start.
So let's back up a little bit. We've identified that access to capital is important in order to build equity. Can you talk a little bit about why we're focusing on access to capital?
Yes. So we are very hyper-focused on capital because we've recently noticed, and this is sort of data and analytics that we've assessed, but minority-owned companies comprise less than 1% of real estate developers nationally. And they manage less than 1% of real estate assets across the Northeast region. And we know that a huge access point for this is access to capital. This is something that we hear not just in the commercial real estate market, but also in terms of first-time home buyer initiatives and programs. Access to capital remains a very consistent issue and is in many instances due to sort of the historical instances of sort of people of color not being allowed legally to be able to participate and to interface with lots of capital sources. And now that lots of those barriers have been lifted, it's a great opportunity now to think through how do we rethink and reimagine what lending and what underwriting processes can look like to best support communities who for the first time in some instances are engaging with the commercial real estate industry. So one story that I like to think of is there was a presentation that was done by one of our developers in our network, and he sort of is working on an 18-unit project out in Massachusetts, a wonderful, really exciting project, like I think 24,000 square feet, just like on the almost 2 acres of land. And he started the presentation and said, I'm the first person in my family that was born with the legal right to own a home, both from a financial perspective of being able to take out a loan legally and not be discriminated against, as well as from like a housing perspective. And I sort of scratched my head and thought, that's a horrible scenario for us to be in, but allowing and creating now a financial industry that's responsive and can sort of reflect on the historical things that have happened up until this point and really working to unwind and unpackage some of those barriers that were created, and how do we really create opportunity for people of color and access for people of color to capital sources. So that's really why we want to be very intentional about capital and financing because we see there's so much opportunity. And even in our work with financial institutions, we've seen such great progress so far.
You kind of alluded to the fact that policy really does affect, the Black and Brown community to have access to just general home ownership, let alone the ability to develop. So let's talk a little bit about policy and ways that BCC is able to support and connect and encourage people to think about policy as we continue to affect the landscape here in Boston.
Yeah, so one way that our organization has really been engaged and involved in policy is previous to me coming to the organization, board members like you and our board president in particular, our former board president, Dave Madden, worked extensively with the city of Boston and really supporting them and helping them rethink and re-envision what their public land disposition process could look like, and how there were opportunities to plug in and make that process more equitable as well as more transparent. So if anyone's ever submitted a bid to a city, and I'm formerly a city director that worked a lot on purchasing and procurement and going through that process, it is a labyrinth if you don't know which direction you're going into. In some instances, it feels like you're putting an envelope into a dark box and you're not sure what's going on in the dark box, how the envelope comes back out. If you get it back, who do you call? There's no number on the box. So we really wanted to be intentional about how do we walk people through what is this very public process and what are the steps and what are the best practices to support developers that want to have access to public land and have the ability and have produce a quality work to do that. So really from that work, we've been really proud to see the city of Boston really like working through and having a much more receptive and open public procurement process, especially as it relates to land. And they've been very intentional about talking through transparently, this is our purchasing process with many different stakeholders, not just communities of color, but through many different industries to really open up and reimagine the partnerships that the city has. And through that work, we've worked with the city to embed and implement an optional DE&I disclosure that they have requested for developers to submit information to the city about what are the things that you're doing in your city in your project as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do you have a diverse project team? Are you working and have you created a system or a process intentionally for diverse communities to be able to invest in this real estate transaction? Do you have a diverse workforce? And if not, do you have a pipeline that you're working on to diversify your workforce? So we were really proud this time last year to see the city of Boston implement that. And from that work are now working on a pilot with 5 cities, including the city of Boston, through something that we're calling the Commonwealth Development Compact. And this is an initiative where we've had 5 city administrations and mayors sign on to a commitment to diversify their commercial real estate industries in their market. So we are now about halfway through the first year of the pilot and working with these 5 administrations and really embedding diversity, equity, and inclusion into their public purchasing process as well as their private development review process.
I mean, that's a lot. It is a lot. I'm very proud of that work and the ability that we've had to be able to work with different municipalities in order to really make some progress and policy change. So thank you for commenting on that. To pivot briefly, what are some things that keep you motivated? As you can see, we do a lot at BCC. So how do you keep yourself motivated?
I think that what keeps me the most motivated is when I receive sort of light emails or touch bases from folks in our network to give updates on their projects and to give updates just on what's been happening. So I think it always gives a little flutter in my heart when I go to one of our BCC events and see someone, like I'll give sort of an anonymous example, but someone that we brought into one of our programs, it's sort of a program to help diversify one of our trade association partners. It's a program we run in partnership with them. They had one of the individuals that participated a few years ago when I first came on board came up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, like Colleen, I have really exciting news. I actually met someone at a firm that I've really been eyeballing and really interested in, but didn't know how to sort of transition my career into that specific type of commercial real estate work." And I got coffee with them and it went really well. And I was like, "Oh, that's amazing. I love to hear that. Definitely keep me posted on how that's going and like how that relationship evolves." A few months later, I meet with him again. He's at another one of our events and he says to me, there's a job offer. They're thinking about offering me a role. There's a new role in this company that they've been thinking through, and they think that I'm a really great fit for it. And I was like, "Oh, that's so exciting. Like, definitely keep me posted." And by the next time I saw him at the next event, the news was I actually was onboarded to this new role at this company that I've been eyeballing for the last few years. And it was just so exciting to be able to create that social capital. Like, that's like a very direct result of the way that our organization builds social capital in the commercial real estate industry. And that's something that's very important to me personally, just as a first generation woman of color that grew up in a very middle class, working class community and family. Commercial real estate is not an industry that myself or anyone in my family or anyone in my neighborhood probably had any concept of, I think, before I came to the industry. It's even one that I struggle to understand and make sense of in my role as a city director, overseeing jobs programs, workforce development. It was sort of like, what's happening over there? Like, how are these buildings getting built? We send people to do construction on the buildings, and we know how to like move the taxes and the money, but like, who is behind these deals? What's going on over there? So it's just really powerful for me to see the social capital that we're building in communities of color, and the access that we're giving to people that are very talented, that are very motivated, and that can do the work and are happy and excited and motivated to do that work. And just seeing that light in their eyes of like, it's happening, is just really like so amazing for me.
Wonderful. Right now at BCC, with all of the initiatives that we've been launching, with all of the connections that we have been making, what are some of the biggest needs that we have, and how can we engage the City Biz audience to participate with us in the future?
Yeah, so I would say one of the best ways to engage with our organization and to support our organization is definitely reaching out to us and connecting with us. We're always on the lookout for more diverse investors, developers, and real estate professionals to support and bring into our network, as well as organizations and firms that are serious and want to commit to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we partner with anywhere from 20 to 45, sometimes 50 organizations at a time that support our work at the Builders of Color Coalition and have signed on to increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the industry. So definitely reach out to us on our LinkedIn or on our website. You can find us at Builders of Color on LinkedIn and on Instagram. If you message us on Instagram, it will be me that will be responding directly, as well as on our LinkedIn. So please do reach out to us if you're serious and want to be part of transforming the real estate industry into one of opportunity and inclusion.
Thank you, Colleen. The last question that I have for you today is, what sets us apart? You mentioned there are a lot of trade organizations and institutions that are doing work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Lots of organizations within commercial real estate, as you know, and have named. What really sets us apart from these other not-for-profits?
I think what really sets apart our organization is that we are a convener. And we really want to bring lots of different folks to the table, and we're very collaborative in the way that we work. So we love to sort of disrupt the status quo, bring together different partners and convene them together to really imagine something that is very different than they would have ever imagined before. And we're very intentional about bringing together institutions and people that may have been siloed in the work that they were doing, and really breaking down those silos so that they can all work together. I think also what's really powerful about the Builders of Color Coalition is that we have a really relatable premise. It's our work is not charity. It's not justice work, right? Like our board president recently was talking, our former board president was talking about this recently. And we're not like a charity organization. We're an organization that's very much rooted in principles of freedom and equity. We really want to create an industry where, regardless of what zip code or community you're from, that you have the freedom to contribute, to thrive, and to be in full presence, and to deliver on your drive and your talent, and to bring that talent and to build that talent into what will ultimately be the next generation of the skyline of the city of Boston and beyond.
I would encourage everybody who is listening to this to check us out, check our website out, BCC, the Builders of Color Coalition. Join us on LinkedIn, message us on Instagram. We hope that you're engaged, especially if you're an ally and you're supporting work that we're talking about, or if you are a person of color within the commercial real estate industry. Please reach out, please come to an event. And we really appreciate the time here with the City Biz audience. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.